Hey there YouTubers, it's Dan Strong with Excel VBA is Fun. Today I want to talk to you about how to speed up your workbook. Some time-tested tips that I have accumulated through a lot of trial and error and through um, searching the web because I was not satisfied with how fast my macros were running. Sometimes they were debug or they would just run in general really slow, and it's irritating. So I'm going to click on my list here. Here's a few things that slow a macro down. So we're going to talk about utilizing screen updating. Many of you have already seen that. Several of you that I've talked to have maybe utilized the screen updating being turned off and on, but maybe haven't messed with calculation much. So we'll talk about that and the benefits of messing with the calculation. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about copying and pasting as a hindrance to your macro running smoothly rather than direct cell referencing in VBA. Deleting and inserting rows or columns. That will slow it down because it has to massively calculate a lot of things whenever something is deleted, and then everything has to be resized and recalculated and everything. Erratic conditional formatting. That's a big one. If you have conditional formatting that you've selected the entire range and copied it down and drag it down, that's usually not a bad thing. But if you accidentally, if it was supposed to be all 6 rows and then you maybe copied down this part, or if you didn't have your dollar signs in the right place, if you've been watching Mike Gervin with Excel is Fun, he will show you some awesome conditional formatting videos that you really need to have in your repertoire. So if you don't do those exactly right and you're copying down things, that is basically it's basically taking that information and comparing it on each line a little bit differently. But if it can take it as a grouping, like from here to sell 100,000, do the same pattern, then it does a lot better with conditional formatting. Now, if there's a ridiculous amount of functions in the cells, or if there's just way too many advanced calculations going on, there's you got 15,000 advanced sum product functions and sum ifs and all that kind of stuff going on every single row and a lot of calculations. That will just slow it down just in general. Another thing, if you've seen my other video, you might want to save it as a .xlsb. B is the binary format, and it just is a really good format. I don't know why they don't make that the default. Anyway, it'll trim down your file size somehow, and it will also make all your macros and all your stuff calculate and just run much smoother. It is a very robust and amazing format that we've discovered a few months ago on the channel, and you should use that if you ever think you're going to have a whole lot of rows and formulate a database or something. Anyway, I'm going to show you what I've come up with here to kind of show you the sample report that we're going to run and show you how we can make it faster. So what we have is a bunch of, I'm going to hit F9 a few times, or actually I can't, that will pause the video, but as you can see, every time you do anything, change any cell, all these will recalculate because we have a bunch of random between or VLOOKUPs between lists of names, which randomizes this table. So when I run the report, I'm going to click this button here in a second, but I'm going to hit Alt F11. That's Alt F11. We'll take a look at the macro that I wrote really quick. So of course we're declaring that's going to be the name we use, the nickname for that worksheet, DS for the data sheet, then RPT for the report sheet, and then we set these up. DS is equal to the sheet called DB, and the sheet called report is nicknamed report. Then I set up these two variables, get the last row on the database sheet and the last row on the report sheet, and then we're going to clear out the last report that was on the report sheet. That takes the report sheet range A2 through G and whatever the last row is, and just clears it out all the contents. Now the starting row is always going to be 2 for the, I'll show you the report sheet. Starting row is always going to be 2 because we don't want to override our headers. Okay. Then the current name is the database sheet range J2. That's here. That's going to be equal. That's going to become the current name that we use for our report each time. Right now we're looking up anybody named Larry on this sheet to only filter all that stuff out on the report sheet. Very simple report. Then we loop through row 2 all the way to whatever the last row is at that time, which is DLR. Then we compare whatever is on the current row in column 3, or C if you will, and if it is the same as Larry, then we'll take that row on the report sheet. Row 1 is equal to the current row, column 1 is equal to column 1 on the other sheet. So we'll copy each one. In fact, I'll take you through it. I'll hit F8. Okay, we're clearing the contents over here. Let's take a look. Whoops. We're clearing the contents now. So hit F8. Okay, it just cleared that report out. Y is equal to 2. The current name is equal to Larry. We're going X is 2 all the way to 11. So the first one says Billy. And is that Larry? No, it isn't. So we'll skip that one. Next one says Billy, Shawanda, Sally, Jim, Harry. Looks like none of these are Larry right now. Okay, so that report was empty. Now, because these are switching every 5 seconds, I'll run a report again and we see there's a few Larrys. So, and then it changed on the fly. Every time it was doing this, it would change to a new name. So it ended up being Billy 3 calculations later. Anyway, click that a few times. So it's all well and good. You see that the report is running, and it doesn't take but a split second. But check this out. What if we had a lot more rows? Let's go all out. Let's go with like a few thousand rows here of the same stuff. Let's just stop there. That's 37. That's near 4,000 rows. Let's click Run Report now. So you see it's having to think about it for just a second. And you notice that it's having to do every single calculation in between every single loop. So it's calculating tens of thousands of cells every single time one would hit F8, or every time it's going through. So let's hold escape down and just interrupt our code there. I held the escape button down. So let's see, we're on, wow, we made it to row 5 on the report sheet, but what's X? X is equal to 8 out of 3,790. We made it to row 8. Fantastic. So you can probably see, I'm sure you take my point, that it's valuable to know how to speed this up. I'm going to go ahead and stop that one dead in its tracks. Now, I do happen to have a lot of random between functions and everything. I even have an average function that takes the average of all these 3 all the way up to whatever the current row is. So it's doing a whole lot of calculations, and that's just to drive the point home. What I can do here, I will go ahead and make these all permanent. I'll hit Control C to copy, and I'll go up to the very top, right click, SV, or you could click the values. So SV, it pastes them all as actual values, so they don't have random between functions anymore. Let's see if that makes any difference. Let's go ahead and save our workbook, hit Run Report. Okay, so it's still taking quite a long time to run this because it's calculating so much. So, okay, I'm going to hold escape again. Pretty much the same issue. We made it to row 17 in that amount of time, so a little faster, but still. Here's what we got to do. Let's go back to our list. Okay, our list says utilize screen updating and learn about calculation. So I'm going to talk about those, but I will show you immediately what's going on. Okay, screen updating, what's that all about? I'm going to hit Alt F11. At the beginning of my macro, I'm going to put a bit of code here. I'm going to say application dot screen updating equals false. Now what does that do? Right now, the screen, not only is Excel calculating every single one of these cells in between each debugging, in between each line of code, it is also updating my screen that I'm staring at. What, you mean it could calculate and not show that on the screen? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying if you disable the screen updating for just a second, then Excel only has to calculate the actual math or the actual things that are going on in the background. It doesn't have to show you and waste all this computer memory on, visual RAM and showing you all this stuff and all the bright colors and the fancy things that are flashing across. It doesn't have to concentrate on that, just the bare numbers in the background, which it does a lot better. So let's see how that does when the application.screen updating is turned to false. Let's see if that makes a difference. And at the very end, of course, I'll put application.screen updating is now true. Okay, so let's see what happens. We'll save our workbook. And this workbook is available for download in our Dropbox link, which is in this video's description. Let's click Run Report again. Okay, so you see that the screen is not updating all the calculations that are going on. I'm going to hold Escape down and just see how far we made it. Let's see where X is at now. Still at 17. Alright, so for this particular macro, it's still working so hard to calculate all those averages and all those crazy numbers going on that, see, even if I hit F8 to debug through each little step of the way, it has to recalculate all that crap, and it's just ridiculous. Let's go to the application. Let's go to the immediate window, and just, if you don't have the immediate window, hit F5. Let's see. Application.screen updating is now back to true. Hit enter. Okay. Now let's stop our macro. Now, here's the kicker. This is a powerful thing that a lot of people don't know. They turn the screen updating off and then they stop. That's not where you stop. Here's the deal. In this particular macro, our problem is not really that the screen is jumping around a lot. Our problem is that it is calculating every blessed cell in between every blessed line and every little everything. So we don't want it to calculate anymore. We want whatever it starts with to just be whatever, especially when you don't have ran betweens and you don't have things that are changing every 5 seconds. Even if the numbers are set in stone and then there's like maybe an average function or maybe a sum and an average function going on, and it doesn't ever change because you haven't changed the actual numbers that are being multiplied or whatever, it still in the background is calculating everything over and over just in case it might need to change, because Excel doesn't know that some of those things are just going to be flat out always the same calculation. So you don't see it all the time, but it's always calculating everything. And not just in this sheet, I'm talking the whole workbook. So let's assume that now we want to tell Excel that we want to take out, we don't want it to calculate every single time. We want to turn calculation in the workbook to manual, because like I was saying, every single worksheet, every single cell that needs to calculate with an equal sign, basically with a function in it, is going to recalculate every single time unless we turn it off. You can do that by going to File and going into your options and going to your formulas, and you can turn the workbook calculation to manual, and just you could have it recalculate only when you hit F9 or click the little calculate button at the bottom. But normally you don't want to have to go into your options and change everything all the time back to automatic or back to manual. The default, by the way, is automatic, and that's our problem. So hit Alt F11 with me. Now we're going to add something amazing. We're going to go not calculate, application.calculation equals, and then it gives you 3 options. We either want it to be XL calculation automatic, XL calculation manual, or semi-automatic, which we just talked about. So, okay, in this instance we want to change it to XL calculation manual. And of course, at the very end of the workbook, we want to go to application dot calculation equals Excel calculation automatic and not manual. So hit enter there. Okay, so let's try this now. In fact, let's hit F8 instead of hitting the button. So right now screen updating is true. We're changing that to false. And when you're debugging, it always says it's true, but when you actually go through it. So application.calculation is currently negative 4105, which I guess is automatic. And we'll change it to 4135. So bam, this is the magic right here. So going through. Okay. So even when you're debugging, you notice that it's going a little bit faster. Okay, but now I'm gonna go ahead and hit this. I'm gonna hit F5 and just let it finish through. It's already done. Yeah, it's already done. So you can see the value there. Let's look at our report. These are all the entries that have Larry on them. There are 618 entries with Larry's name on it. So obviously, if you have a brain, you just saw that that was awesome. So, and now calculation is back on. See? Just click anything and it'll change, and it'll take, of course, 100 years to calculate, because you should never put this many functions as a part of your database, but whatever. So let's click run report again. And I will go ahead and, just to prove it, I will go ahead and clear all this stuff out here. Control Shift down, hit delete. And of course, it wants to, alright, so hit this button, wait a few seconds, and I think it's done already. Let's look at the report sheet. So, yeah, there's 618. So that's how you make your macro run freaking fast. Let's go back to our list. Really quick, if you use copy, something or other, .copy, or anything like that, it's not as fast as if you use what we've used here, which is this location equals this whatever dot value, or just this. It will take and slap the value or the number or the text or whatever in that cell, but it will not. Something about copying stuff to the clipboard just makes Excel mad, especially if it's a huge amount of data. So, and then even emptying the clipboard, just a mess. Deleting rows or deleting columns or inserting them makes Excel mad, because it has to calculate even if calculation is set to manual. For some reason it has to reconfigure everything and reorganize the way all the cells are set up, and it does have to do a calculation, because that could throw off some other formulas if they're dependent on something that was in B and now is in D or something like that. Yeah, D would become row or column C. So it does have to do a little calculating, and then it really ruins your flow. Then conditional formatting, talk about that. Having way too many functions in there, try to minimize that if you can. Sometimes you cannot. And then save it as an XLSB. The main thing I wanted to show you is using screen updating and using the application.calculation, and then turning it back to automatic at the very end. You can, of course, download this workbook and just check out the Dropbox link on my video description, and you will have access to it. It is called the Speed Up Workbook.xlsm, and in fact, I think I will save that as XLSB and see if the macro runs even faster. XLSB, save that. So now it's a binary file. Let's run the report again. Yeah, that was just a little bit faster. It's already done. Cool. Alright, well, speedupworkbook.xlsb is on its way to you. I will save it in the Dropbox. But to you, I will say adieu, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching, and God bless.